See, I was like, there's probably
The
something.
second he started talking about Obama, I was like, oh, he's guilty.
Yeah.
Also, like, why are you talking about Obama and treason? You got a guy who has sex with teenagers that you are protecting.
Also, some of the lies are
other
so
pedophiles.
Yeah.
Trump is protecting other pedophiles.
Facts.
Like, that's what.
All right, folks, that is a clip from the Flagrant podcast hosted by comedian Andrew Schulz. It's one of the most wildly successful podcasts in the world, and it is a MAGA-friendly, largely pro-Trump podcast. They interviewed Donald Trump, they supported Donald Trump, and now they have totally turned on Donald Trump. That was Andrew Schulz realizing in real time, or conveying how he realized in real time, that Donald Trump was implicated in the Epstein files, completing Schultz's journey from Trump supporter to Trump opponent, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as you know, the Epstein situation is backfiring spectacularly for Trump, and Schultz here, from a Trump-adjacent perspective, he's making the case, or a similar case that we've been making here, which is that Trump is pulling out all the stops, desperate to distract from the political damage this is doing to him. Now, so far, MAGA has clung to him despite their disagreements, but this isn't helping his numbers with independents. I mean, obviously, he won't have any support from the Democrats, but the support that he needs to preserve his coalition from the Republican or from the independents, that's hemorrhaging here. And Schultz goes into more detail about his frustrations with Trump's spectacular, disastrous mismanagement of the Epstein scandal during their most recent podcast, in which they interview liberal journalist and author of Abundance, Ezra Klein.
Trump is like, hey, the base thinks vaccines are fucked up. RFK, get in there.
January
Research
6th,
the vaccine.
they want him out.
They
we'll
want
get
him out. We're putting him out. And this, he is rebuking the base. Like, almost like spitting in their face. Like, they are asking for it. He campaigned on it. He puts Bongino and Cash in there, which might be the stupidest thing in the history of the world. Like, why would you put the two guys that have nonstop pounded the pavement talking about how we're going to expose this Epstein thing, and the second they get in there, like, you better shut the fuck up.
Yeah, to shut him up.
Go on Rogan, lie. Like, it is a very peculiar thing. It works.
I want to stop right there because this is important. Now, he's referring to Kash Patel, the current FBI director, who used to be a MAGA influencer. By the way, a cultish freak and a loser, a guy who wrote, a children's book depicting Donald Trump as a king, right? This was really cultish, creepy, indoctrinating children's book to like bring them into MAGA. It gives off like Hitler Youth vibes. But Kash Patel, in the years that before he became FBI director, so basically during the Trump administration, was peddling these ridiculous conspiracy theories on podcasts and elsewhere, talking often about the Epstein files and hyping up the notion that there's some sort of conspiracy which implicates liberals, progressives, and Democratic elites. And what he's talking about here is Kash Patel was on Joe Rogan singing a very different tune the day that Elon Musk announced that Donald Trump was in the Epstein files, and that's why the Epstein files weren't being released. And again, before we play this clip, I want to remind you the timeline of things we've learned since then is stunning, because we have since learned, according to the Wall Street Journal, that Trump was told by the Justice Department that his name is all over the Epstein files in May. In June, Donald Trump and Elon Musk broke up, and that's when Musk announced that Trump is in the Epstein files. And that's why they weren't being released, which seems to coincide with that first point, Trump finding out in May that his name is all over the files and the Justice Department announcing that they don't intend to release the files. And then, of course, all the subsequent, revelations that the creepy letter that Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein, the various unearthed photographs and footage, Jeffrey Epstein in a 2010 deposition pleading the fifth to the question of, have you ever socialized with Donald Trump in the presence of females under the age of 18? Rather than, he says, I would love to answer honestly, but I have to plead the fifth. Again, shocking stuff. And all of that happening, Kash Patel went on Joe Rogan the day that Musk announced that Trump was in the Epstein files. And again, just very, very calm and very measured. And, he killed himself. Epstein killed himself. All that stuff I used to say, I was wrong. He definitely killed himself. Don't you think, Joe, if I had more information, I would give it to you? So again, kudos to Andrew for putting the pieces together here and just bluntly saying he thinks that Kash Patel lied his ass off and was sent to do so on Joe Rogan, another major MAGA-friendly pro-Trump podcast, to try to sell the deception.
In that, I think it moved any of the smoke off of Trump, because at least for me, I was like, there's no way that he's involved if he's putting Bongino and Kash in, who have campaigned on exposing it. Like, why would you hire those guys or appoint those guys, right? So I'm like, he can't be. But the fact that he will not touch this, and then this last week, him doing the bullshit distractions,
Bro.
dropping the MLK file. Like, who asked for the MLK file?
Yeah.
Who asked for MLK?
You know what's funny is I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist, and I was initially like, the Epstein thing for me was just the last straw in terms of you not getting things done. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure there's some smoke, they'll release it. But the more they're doing to hide it, the more I'm like, oh, they're hiding something crazy. Yeah. I didn't necessarily, I was like, there's probably something.
The second he started talking about Obama, I was like, oh, he's guilty.
Yeah.
Also, like, why are you talking about Obama and treason? You got a guy who has sex with teenagers that you are protecting.
Also, some of the lies are
other
so
pedophiles.
Yeah.
Trump is protecting other pedophiles.
Facts.
Like, that's what.
So that is pretty blunt coming from Andrew Schultz and the boys at the Flagrant podcast. Again, this is the podcast that not only was largely pro-Trump in his disposition, they interviewed and supported him. They did. And since Trump has failed spectacularly in his first 6 months to produce like any of his campaign promises, I shouldn't say that. Trump has actually delivered on many of his campaign promises if you were paying attention. So when he promised that he would seek revenge and retribution, for example, when he promised widespread tariffs, he is actually delivering on those promises to the detriment of the American people, to the detriment of constitutional freedoms and First Amendment liberties, the right of the free speech and free press, also various norms, civil liberties, due process, all those things to the detriment of the American people. But those promises he did keep, and unfortunately, the boys at Flagrant didn't pay attention to that. And again, I understand. I feel the temptation to wag my finger and say, what the hell were you guys thinking? It was all out there. But given their influence, given the influence of a Rogan, of a Flagrant podcast, of a Theo Von, of a Dave Smith, of a Tim Dillon, of a Shane Gillis, these either openly pro-Trump or at least MAGA-coded right-wing podcasters, or MAGA-adjacent podcasters, the fact that they're criticizing Trump now is welcome, and we need to encourage them and coax them over into the anti-Trump coalition. Dave Smith, libertarian comedian and Trump voter who during the Iran strikes said that he, regretted voting for Trump, apologized for voting for Trump, and called for Trump's impeachment, seems to be doubling down, calling out Trump relentlessly over Trump's mismanagement of the Epstein files. If you actually just scroll through his Twitter feed, he's retweeting Theo Von, sure feels like this is the dark arts are afoot. Why no vote, Speaker Johnson, in reference to releasing the Epstein files? Because Dave Smith says, so Speaker Johnson killed a vote on releasing the Epstein files, and a judge just blocked the release of grand jury Epstein testimony. Man, for something that wasn't at all a conspiracy, there sure are a hell of a lot of powerful people hell-bent on us never seeing the proof. Dave Smith saying, I'm calling for all it to be released, and Trump, who doesn't have that thing in common, is covering it up. It's almost like your theory is ridiculous. Now, Trump can pretend that he tried to give us the truth on Epstein, but the courts just blocked it. It's complete bullshit, of course, and no one will buy it. And he's just going on like this. He is taking Trump to task relentlessly over his mismanagement of the Epstein files. Theo Von, who is less politically coded, again, just a friendly guy. He interviewed Trump. He interviewed J.D. Vance. They had a friendly rapport. He was obviously more pro-Trump and more Vance and more pro-Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. He's also calling this out in a friendlier fashion. He's retweeting Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie about their discharge petition to force the vote. Why can't the Ro Khanna Thomas Massie bill be put to a vote this week? Representative Johnson, J.D. Vance. And of course, it didn't happen because, as I point out on Twitter, it's because Trump is in the Epstein files. And even Tim Dillon, who's probably the most openly pro-Trump. I mean, my God, he wants Megyn Kelly to be the new attorney general. Jesus Christ. It's hard to imagine somebody being worse than Pam Bondi, but she could compete. She is a former lawyer. And I think she's smarter than Pam Bondi and also more vindictive and cruel, believe it or not. I mean, she's been warped. But even he has been torching the Trump administration. So it's these like right-wing MAGA-coded podcasts from Joe Rogan Theo Vaughn, Flagrant, Shane Gillis, Tim Dillon. They're all calling Trump, Dave Smith, they're calling Trump out now, and we need to keep that momentum going. That I'm still making my way through the Ezra Klein Flagrant podcast, which just dropped earlier today. From what I've heard, quite frankly, and I'm about 45 minutes in, Klein, believe it or not, is actually even better on Flagrant than Pete Buttigieg was, than Ro Khanna was, than Bernie Sanders was. He actually fit in better, surprisingly. This very like technocratic liberal journalist actually holds his own. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Klein actually has tattoos. I clocked like 2 or 3 tattoos on various arms. He is defying the stereotype of, again, the buttoned up technocratic liberal commentator. And he fits in with the bros, I think, better than any liberal or Democrat who has currently been on it. So again, we need to keep the momentum up. But this is good news. This top MAGA-friendly podcast calling Trump out for what he is and saying bluntly, they think he's guilty. They think he's not only in the Epstein files, but he's guilty in terms of what he is in the Epstein files, which is a stunning thing. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.